Marcus Webb's alarm went off at 4:47 a.m., 3 minutes before it needed to, because his body had learned that those 3 extra minutes meant the difference between chaos and controlled disaster. He lay in the darkness of his bedroom for exactly 10 seconds, his only luxury, listening to the sounds of his household, the ancient radiator clanking in the corner, the neighbor's dog barking 2 floors down, the soft breathing of his daughters in the room next door, still blissfully asleep. Then he was up. The apartment was small, a 2-bedroom in East Oakland that he'd moved into 3 years ago when the rent was still manageable. Now it ate half his paycheck from the hospital, but it was clean, safe, and close to the girls' school. That was all that mattered. Marcus moved through his morning routine with the efficiency of a man who'd been doing this alone for 3 years. Coffee first, cheap stuff from the corner store, but it did the job. While it brewed, he pulled out the pink notebook where he tracked everything. Dentist appointments, permission slips that needed signing, which daughter needed new shoes this month, how much was left in the account after rent. $247 until next Friday. He'd made it work with less. The girls' lunches were already prepped from the night before. Peanut butter and jelly for Zara, turkey and cheese for Amara, because she decided last month that she didn't like peanut butter anymore. He added apple slices, carrot sticks, and the cookies he'd baked on Sunday. Not the fancy organic snacks the other kids brought, but made with love. That had to count for something. By 5:30, he was in their bedroom, gently shaking Amara awake. She was 8, the oldest by 2 years, with her mother's eyes and his stubborn chin. "Morning, baby girl," he whispered, brushing her braids back from her forehead. "Time to get up." "5 more minutes, Daddy," she mumbled, exactly like she did every morning. "Can't do 5 more minutes today, sweet pea. Daddy's got that early shift, remember? Miss Chen is going to walk you and Zara to school." That got her eyes open. "Miss Chen makes us walk too fast." "Miss Chen makes sure you're not late," Marcus corrected gently, moving to Zara's bed. His youngest was already awake, watching him with those solemn 6-year-old eyes that seemed to see too much. "Hi, Daddy." "Hi, baby. Ready to start the day?" Zara nodded, then sat up and wrapped her arms around his neck. She did this every morning, held on just a little longer than Amara, as if she was making sure he was real, that he wasn't going anywhere. Marcus held her back, breathing in the smell of the cocoa butter he'd rubbed into her scalp the night before while detangling her hair. These moments were what kept him going through the double shifts, through the exhaustion, through the nights when the loneliness felt like it might swallow him whole. "I love you," he said into her hair. "I love you more," Zara whispered back. "Impossible," Marcus replied, kissing the top of her head before releasing her. "Now, let's get moving. Last one dressed has to carry the recycling down." That got them both scrambling. Marcus moved back to the kitchen, pulling out the flat iron he'd learned to use through YouTube videos and pure desperation. By 6:15, both girls were dressed, fed, and sitting patiently while he did their hair. Amara wanted 2 French braids today. Zara wanted her usual puffs with the purple ribbons. His hands moved with practiced confidence now, though he could still remember those first terrible months after Simone died, when he'd sent the girls to school with lopsided ponytails and hair that wasn't properly moisturized. One of the other mothers, Mrs. Patterson from down the hall, had finally taken pity on him and given him a tutorial. "You've got good hands," she'd said, watching him practice on Amara's patient head. "You're going to figure this out." He had, eventually, one YouTube video at a time, one failed attempt after another until his daughter's hair was just as neat as any other child's. "Daddy, can we go to the park this weekend?" Amara asked as he worked the edge control along her hairline. "Maybe Sunday if Daddy doesn't have to work. We'll see, okay?" "You always say we'll see," Amara said, but without accusation. "Just fact." Marcus's chest tightened. "I know, baby. I'm trying." "I know you are," Amara said simply, reaching back to pat his hand. 8 years old and already learning to carry disappointment with grace. It wasn't fair, By 6:45, Marcus was in his scrubs, navy blue with Oakland General Hospital Environmental Services embroidered on the pocket. Janitor. That's what the job was, though the fancy title made it sound better. He cleaned hospital rooms, mopped floors, sanitized equipment. It wasn't the career he'd imagined when he'd started pre-med at UC Berkeley 15 years ago. But that was before Simone got pregnant with Amara. Before he'd dropped out to support his young family. Before student loans and hospital bills and funeral costs had buried any dreams of going back to finish his degree. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Ms. Chen knocked at 70 sharp. She was elderly, Korean, and had lived across the hall for 20 years. She watched the girls sometimes when Marcus's shifts ran late, never accepting payment but always accepting the meals he cooked for her in return. "Good morning, Mr. Webb," she said in her accented English. "Girls ready?" "Ready as they'll ever be," Marcus said, helping them into their backpacks. He knelt down, looking each daughter in the eye. "What are the rules?" "Listen to Ms. Chen," Amara recited. "Stay together," Zara added. "And?" "We love you more than the moon and stars," they said in unison, throwing their arms around his neck. Marcus held them tight, breathing them in, these two, pieces of his heart that walked around outside his body. "And I love you more than all of that combined. Be good. I'll see you tonight." He watched from the doorway as Ms. Chen led them down the hallway, both girls turning to wave before they disappeared around the corner. Then he was alone. Marcus grabbed his keys, his wallet with the $247 that had to last until Friday, and the photo he kept in his pocket, Simone, laughing, her head thrown back in pure joy. It had been taken a week before Zara was born, before the amniotic fluid embolism that the doctors said was rare, unpreventable, and absolutely fatal. "I'm doing my best," he whispered to the photo, like he did every morning. "I hope it's enough." Then he locked the door and headed to work. The bus ride to Oakland General took 45 minutes. Marcus used the time to review his medical terminology flashcards, a habit he'd never quite broken from his pre-med days. He told himself it was just to keep his mind sharp, but really, it was a connection to the life he'd once imagined. Dr. Marcus Webb. It had a nice ring to it. Now he was just Marcus, the guy who mopped up blood and vomit and worse things he tried not to think about. But he was good at his job. He knew which cleaning solutions worked best on different surfaces. He knew how to move efficiently through a room. He knew the importance of sanitation in preventing hospital-acquired infections. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, his pre-med knowledge came in handy in ways that made the doctors look at him twice. Like last month when he'd been cleaning a room and noticed that a post-op patient's drain output looked wrong. He'd mentioned it to the nurse who'd dismissed him. Marcus had gone to the resident instead, described what he'd seen, and they'd discovered an internal bleed that would have been catastrophic if left untreated. The resident had asked him, "Where'd you learn to recognize that?" "I read a lot," Marcus had said, which was true. He'd just left out the part about the 3 years of pre-med courses he'd completed before his life had taken a different turn. Marcus's shift at the hospital was supposed to end at 4 p.m., giving him just enough time to pick up the girls from after-school care. But at 3:30, his supervisor approached with that look that meant trouble. "Webb, I need you to stay late. Jenkins called in sick and we've got 2 ORs that need deep cleaning before tomorrow's surgeries." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Sir, I've got to pick up my daughters." "Time and a half," his supervisor interrupted. "And I'll put you down for an extra personal day next month." Marcus did the math in his head. Time and a half for 3 hours meant an extra 67,15. That was groceries. That was Zara's shoes. That was breathing room. "Let me make a call," he said. Ms. Chen agreed to pick up the girls, bless her. Marcus worked until 7:30, his back aching, his feet screaming, but with the promise of extra money on his next, You check. It was worth it. It had to be worth it. He made it home by 8:15. The girls had already eaten. Miss Chen had made them fried rice and were in their pajamas, homework spread across the coffee table. "Daddy," Zara launched herself at him. Marcus caught her, held her tight, then moved to kiss Amara's forehead. "How was school?" "Good. We learned about fractions." "I colored a picture of a butterfly," Zara announced. "Miss Chen said it was beautiful." "I bet it was." Marcus looked at the older woman who was gathering her things. "Thank you. Seriously, I don't know what I'd do." "You'd figure it out," Miss Chen interrupted kindly. "You always do. Now I go home. Girls were very good." After she left, Marcus helped the girls finish their homework, read them each a story, and tuck them into bed. By the time he collapsed onto his own mattress at 10:30, every muscle in his body ached. But tomorrow was Saturday, his day off. The day he'd promised to take the girls somewhere special if he could afford it. He pulled out his phone and looked at his bank account. With the overtime, he'd have just enough for the zoo. They'd have to pack sandwiches instead of buying food there, and they'd have to skip the gift shop. But they could go. Marcus set his alarm for 6 a.m. and closed his eyes, already planning the logistics. This was his life now, an endless calculation of time and money and energy, trying to be enough for two little girls who deserved the world. He was so tired, bone-deep tired, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. But when Zara had hugged him tonight, she'd whispered, "You're the best daddy ever." And that, somehow, was enough to keep going. The flight from Oakland to Denver was supposed to be routine. Marcus had saved for 6 months for this trip, a long weekend visiting his sister Janelle, who'd been begging to meet her nieces for over a year. The tickets alone had cost $890, a staggering amount that he'd squirreled away in the envelope marked "Someday" that he kept hidden in his sock drawer. But Janelle had recently lost her husband to cancer, and she was alone now, like him. They needed each other. The girls needed to know their aunt. So Marcus had bought the tickets, packed their suitcases with military precision, and tried not to think about the fact that this weekend would eat through most of his emergency fund. They were in boarding group 5, economy seats toward the back, row 28. Marcus had the aisle, Amar the middle, and Zara the window. The girls were vibrating with excitement, their first plane ride. "Remember the rules," Marcus said as they settled in. "Quiet voices, stay in your seats. If you need something, ask Daddy first." "We know, Daddy," Amara said with the exasperation of an 8-year-old who'd heard the same instructions 12 times. The plane filled up around them. Marcus helped other passengers with their luggage, using his height to reach the overhead bins. An elderly man smiled at him gratefully. A young woman thanked him 3 times. Then she boarded. Marcus noticed her the way everyone noticed her, because everything about her screamed wealth and power. She was a black woman, maybe mid-30s, with natural hair styled in an elegant, tapered cut that probably cost more than Marcus made in a week. Her clothes were expensive. Designer jeans, a silk blouse, a leather jacket that looked butter-soft. Diamond studs in her ears caught the cabin light. She was carrying a baby who couldn't have been more than 4 months old, and she looked absolutely terrified. The baby was screaming. Not fussing, not crying, but full-throated, desperate wailing that made every passenger turn to stare. The woman's face was a mask of barely controlled panic as she struggled down the aisle, her designer diaper bag catching on seats, the baby squirming in her arms. She was alone. No partner, no helper, just her and the screaming infant. Marcus watched her approach, and something in his chest tightened with recognition. He knew that look, that expression of a parent drowning in public, waiting for judgment, expecting criticism. She reached her seat, first class, row 3, and the baby's screaming somehow got louder. Passengers were already grumbling. A businessman in row 2 sighed dramatically. Marcus focused on his girls, getting them settled, but his ears stayed tuned to the front of the plane. The woman was trying everything. He could hear her voice, pitched high and tight with stress. "Please, sweetie, please, Mommy's here, I've got you, please stop crying." But the baby wouldn't stop. The plane pushed back from the gate. The flight attendants began their safety demonstration. And still, the baby screamed. By the time they were taxiing toward the runway, the cabin had filled with that particular tension that comes when everyone is annoyed but trying to be polite about it. The baby's cries had taken on a quality that Marcus recognized immediately. Not anger, not hunger, but pain. Something was wrong. He unbuckled his seatbelt without thinking. "Daddy?" Amara looked at him questioningly. "Stay here, baby girl. Watch your sister. I'll be right back." Marcus made his way toward first class as the plane turned onto the runway. A flight attendant immediately intercepted him. "Sir, you need to return to your seat. We're about to take off." "I know, but I think that baby might be in medical distress. I have medical training." It was stretching the truth. 3 years of pre-med wasn't medical training, not really. But the authority in his voice made the flight attendant hesitate. "I'll just take a quick look," Marcus said, already moving past her. The woman in first class didn't notice him at first. She was too focused on the baby, tears streaming down her face, whispering desperately, "I don't know what you need. I don't know how to help you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Marcus crouched beside her seat. Up close, he could see that her expensive clothes were rumpled, that there were dark circles under her eyes, that her hands were shaking. "Excuse me," he said gently. "I think I might be able to help." She looked at him with eyes that held a wild, desperate hope. "Please, I don't know what's wrong. She won't stop crying. She's been like this for 2 hours and I don't. I can't." Marcus held out his hands. "May I?" For a second, she hesitated. She didn't know him. He was a stranger in worn jeans and a faded t-shirt, asking to take her baby. But desperation won. She handed over the infant, and Marcus immediately felt what he'd suspected. The baby was burning up. "She has a fever," he said, keeping his voice calm. "A high one. When did it start?" I don't know. This morning? I thought she was just fussy. I didn't." The woman's voice cracked. "I'm a terrible mother. I should have known." "You're not terrible. You're tired and scared, and babies are really good at hiding symptoms until they're not." Marcus was already examining the infant with practiced efficiency, checking her ears. One was bright red and inflamed. "She has an ear infection. That's why she's screaming. The pressure change during takeoff is excruciating for her." The woman stared at him. "How do you know that?" "I used to be pre-med, and I've had 2 daughters with more ear infections than I can count." He looked at the flight attendant who was hovering nearby. "Do you have any infant pain reliever on board? Acetaminophen?" "I can check. Please, and some warm compresses if possible." The flight attendant hurried away. Marcus gently repositioned the baby, supporting her head and neck, elevating her slightly to help with the ear pressure. He began to hum, low and rhythmic, the same tune he'd hummed to his own daughters when they were infants and in pain. Slowly, impossibly, the screaming began to subside. The baby's cries turned to whimpers, then to hiccuping sobs, then to exhausted silence. Her tiny fist curled around Marcus's thumb, holding on like it was a lifeline. The cabin went quiet. Every passenger within earshot was watching this tall black man in economy-class clothes, holding a first-class baby, humming a lullaby that seemed to work magic. Marcus looked at the woman and saw that she was crying again, but differently now. With relief, with gratitude, with something else he couldn't quite name. "How did you—" she started. "Sir, we need you back in your seat." The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff." The flight attendant returned with a small bottle of infant pain reliever and several warm towels. Marcus carefully administered the medicine, showed the mother how to place the warm compress against the baby's infected ear, and explained what to do if the symptoms worsened. "When you land, get her to a pediatrician immediately," he said, gently transferring the now quiet baby back to her mother's arms. "She'll need antibiotics." "Thank you," the woman whispered. "I don't. Thank you. Doesn't feel like enough." Marcus smiled. "You would have figured it out. You're doing fine." "Sir." The flight attendant's voice was more urgent now. Marcus squeezed the woman's shoulder once, then hurried back to his seat, dropping into it just as the engines roared and the plane began to accelerate down the runway. "What happened, Daddy?" Zara asked, her eyes wide. "Just helped a mama with her baby, sweet pea." "Was the baby sick?" "A little bit, but she'll be okay now." As the plane lifted into the air, Marcus leaned his head back and closed his eyes, his heart still pounding. He could feel the weight of the stares from other passengers, the whispers. He'd broken protocol, made a scene, drawn attention to himself. But that baby had needed help, and Marcus knew what it felt like to be desperate and alone with a sick child, praying that someone, anyone, would see you and care. He'd been that someone today. It would have to be enough. Marcus didn't expect to see her again. After the plane leveled off, he focused on his daughters, entertaining Zara with coloring books, helping Amar with the puzzle book she'd brought, pointing out the window at the clouds that looked like animals. He tried not to think about the woman in first class, about the way she'd looked at him with desperate hope, about the weight of that baby in his arms. But an hour into the flight attendant appeared beside his seat with a tray. "Compliments of Ms. Winters," she said with a smile, setting down 3 first-class meals. Real food, not the sad sandwiches Marcus had packed. "Oh, we can't," Marcus started. She insisted. "Actually, she threatened to buy out the entire galley if I didn't bring this to you and your daughters." The flight attendant's eyes twinkled. "She's very persuasive." Amara and Zara were already staring at the food with wide eyes. Pasta with chicken, fresh fruit, chocolate cake. "Tell her thank you," Marcus said quietly, his throat tight. 30 minutes before landing, the flight attendant returned with a note card. Heavy paper, elegant handwriting. "I don't know your name, but I need to thank you properly. I'm seated in 3A. Could you spare a moment before we land?" C. Winters. Marcus looked at his daughters, who were dozing against each other, exhausted from the excitement. He flagged down the flight attendant. "Could you watch them for just a minute? They're asleep." "Of course." Marcus made his way to first class. The woman, C. Winters, was awake, her baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. Up close, without the panic, Marcus could see that she was beautiful. Striking, really, with high cheekbones and intelligent eyes that studied him carefully. "Hi," he said, suddenly aware of how out of place he looked in this section of the plane. "Hi." She gestured to the empty seat beside her. "Please." Marcus sat, uncomfortable with the leather and space and luxury of it all. "I need to know your name," she said, "so I know who saved my daughter's life today." "I didn't save." "You did." Her voice was firm. "I was having a complete breakdown. I had no idea what was wrong with her. I thought I was failing at the most basic requirement of motherhood, and you knew. You fixed it. You made her stop hurting." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "So, please, tell me your name." Marcus Webb. I'm Camille Winters." She shifted the baby slightly. "And this is Aria. She's beautiful. She's my whole world, and I almost—" Camille's voice cracked. She took a breath, composed herself with visible effort. "I'm a CEO. I run a tech company with 2,000 employees. I've given presentations to Congress. I've negotiated deals worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But being a mother?" She laughed bitterly. "I'm completely lost." "You're not lost. You're learning. There's a difference." "Where are your daughters? The flight attendant mentioned you had children." "Row 28, Amara and Zara, 8 and 6. Something shifted in Camille's expression. "You're traveling alone with them?" "Yeah, we're visiting my sister in Denver. It's their first flight." "And you still helped me? Even though you had your own children to worry about?" Marcus shrugged. "Your baby needed help. That's all that mattered." Camille was quiet for a long moment, studying him. "Can I ask you something? And please be honest." "Okay." "Are you married?" The question caught him off guard. "No, I'm widowed. My wife died 3 years ago, just after Zara was born." "I'm sorry," Camille said, and the sincerity in her voice was palpable. "I'm not married either. Arya's father left when I was 6 months pregnant. Said he wasn't ready for fatherhood, that a baby would complicate his life." She looked down at her daughter. "She's been just mine from the beginning, and I'm terrified I'm not enough." "You are," Marcus said firmly. "Trust me. The fact that you're worried about it means you're already doing better than half the parents out there." "How do you know what to do?" Camille asked, her voice small. "With your daughters? How do you know when they're sick or hurt versus just being fussy? How do you not completely fall apart every time they cry?" "I did fall apart, constantly. For the first year after Simone died, I was a complete disaster. I sent them to school with mismatched socks and cereal for lunch because I forgot to make sandwiches. I cried in the Target parking lot because I couldn't figure out the right size diapers." He smiled sadly. "You learn, you fail, you get up and try again. That's all any of us can do." The captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing their initial descent into Denver. "I want to pay you," Camille said suddenly, "for helping Arya, for the medical advice. Let me give you—" "No." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "Absolutely not. But you deserve—" "I helped because your daughter needed help, not for money." Camille bit her lip, clearly struggling with something. Then she pulled out her phone. "Will you at least let me give you my number, in case—" She hesitated. "In case you're ever in San Francisco? I owe you dinner, a proper thank you." Marcus thought about saying no. This woman lived in a different world. First-class seats, designer clothes, probably a penthouse in Pacific Heights. He was a janitor from East Oakland who counted quarters to buy his daughter's new shoes. But something in her eyes stopped him. Not desperation this time. Something else. Hope, maybe. Connection. "Okay," he heard himself say. She typed her number into his phone, then called herself so she'd have his. "Marcus Webb," she said, looking at his name on her screen. "I'm not going to forget what you did today." It was nothing. It was everything. Marcus returned to his seat as the plane began its descent. Zara woke up and immediately climbed into his lap, burying her face in his neck. "Did you help the mama and baby, Daddy?" she asked sleepily. "Yeah, baby, I did." "Because that's what good people do?" Marcus kissed the top of her head, his heart full to bursting. "Yeah, sweet pea, that's what good people do." As the wheels touched down in Denver, Marcus caught himself glancing toward first class, where Camille Winters was holding her daughter, and for just a moment, their eyes met across the cabin. She mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." Marcus nodded once, then focused on his girls, on getting their things together, on the practical logistics of deplaning. He didn't think he'd ever hear from her again. He had no idea that in 3 days, everything would change. 3 days later, Marcus's phone rang at 11:47 p.m. He was half asleep, having just finished a double shift, when Camille's name appeared on his screen. His first thought was panic. Something happened to the baby. "Hello?" "Marcus, I'm so sorry to call this late." Camille's voice was shaky. "Arya spiked another fever. I took her to the pediatrician like you said, got the antibiotics, but now she won't take the medicine, and I don't know if I should go to the ER or if I'm overreacting, and I just—" She broke off. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have called. You don't even know me." Marcus sat up, fully awake. "What's her temperature?" 102.5. "Has she been taking fluids?" "Some. Not as much as usual." For the next 20 minutes, Marcus walked Camille through everything: how to get a baby to take medicine, how to monitor for dehydration, when to worry, and when to wait. By the end, Arya had taken her medication and Camille sounded calmer. "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly. "Again." "You just did." There was a pause. Then, "Marcus, can I ask you something? Do you do consulting? Parenting consulting? Because I would pay you whatever you wanted to just be available for questions like this." Marcus laughed. "I'm not a consultant. I'm just a dad who's made every mistake in the book." "You're more than that." Her voice was serious. "You have knowledge that people like me, people with all the money in the world, can't buy. You have experience, wisdom, and you're kind about sharing it. I'm really just a janitor." Camille's voice was gentle. "I looked you up, Marcus. I hope you don't mind. Oakland General Hospital Environmental Services. But I also saw your LinkedIn profile. 3 years of pre-med at Berkeley before you had to drop out. You were on track to become a doctor." Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. That was a long time ago. "What if you could finish?" The words hung in the air between them. "What?" "What if you could go back to school? Complete your degree? I have resources, Marcus, connections. I could make some calls, get you into a program that works with your schedule." "No." The word came out sharper than Marcus intended. "I appreciate the thought, but no. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It is. And I can't accept it." Marcus's voice was firm, but not unkind. "I know you mean well, but I don't need saving. I'm doing fine." "Are you?" Camille asked softly. "Because from what I've seen, you're working yourself to death while raising 2 daughters alone. You helped me when I was drowning, Marcus. Why won't you let someone help you?" "Because that's different." "How?" Marcus didn't have a good answer. "If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one." The phone calls became a pattern. Camille would text with questions about Arya, sleep schedules, developmental milestones, whether certain symptoms were normal. Marcus would respond between shifts, during his lunch break, late at night after the girls were asleep. But the conversations evolved. They started talking about other things. Camille told him about her company, the pressure of being a black woman CEO in Silicon Valley, the isolation of success. Marcus told her about his daughters, about Simone, about the dreams he'd buried when life took a different turn. 2 weeks after the flight, Camille asked, "Would you and the girls like to come to San Francisco for the day? I'd love to meet Amara and Zara properly, and Arya keeps looking at her little stuffed airplane like she's searching for someone." Marcus knew he should say no. This was getting complicated. But Amara had been asking about the lady with the crying baby, and Zara wanted to know if the baby was feeling better. "Just for the day," he said. "We can take Bart in. I'll send a car." "Camille, it's an hour each way on public transit with 2 kids, Marcus. Let me send a car, please." He agreed because arguing with Camille Winters was like arguing with a hurricane, pointless and exhausting. The driver picked them up at 9 a.m. in a black SUV that made Mrs. Patterson whisper, "Who's that, Mr. Webb?" as they walked past her door. "Just a friend," Marcus said, though friend felt both insufficient and too presumptuous. Camille's house in Pacific Heights was everything Marcus expected: stunning, massive, filled with art and light and space. But what surprised him was how empty it felt. Beautiful, but sterile, like a magazine spread rather than a home. "Welcome," Camille said, greeting them at the door with Arya in her arms. The baby had grown in just 2 weeks, her eyes brighter, her smile wider. Amara and Zara were shy at first, but Camille had prepared. She showed them to a room she'd set up with toys, books, crafts. "I wasn't sure what 8- and 6-year-olds liked," she said nervously, "so I got everything." "You didn't have to do this," Marcus said, watching his daughter's eyes go wide. I wanted to. Camille looked at him. I wanted you to feel welcome here. While the girls played and Arya napped, Marcus and Camille talked in her enormous kitchen. She made coffee, expensive stuff that tasted like velvet, and they sat at her marble island. Can I ask you something? Camille said. Why did you help me on that plane? You had your own daughters to care for. You were in economy. I was in first class. We were strangers. Why did you get up? Marcus thought about it. Because I saw you. Really saw you. Not the expensive clothes or the first-class seat. I saw a mother who was scared and alone and didn't know what to do, and I remembered being that person. He paused. Nobody should feel that alone. Camille's eyes filled with tears. I've been alone for a long time, Marcus. Even before Arya's father left. Even when I was climbing the corporate ladder. Even in rooms full of people. I've been alone. She wiped her eyes. And then you appeared, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was drowning by myself. Marcus reached across the island and took her hand. It was warm, soft, and trembling slightly. You're not alone anymore, he said quietly. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then Zara's voice called from the other room. Daddy, Amara won't share. Marcus smiled ruefully. Duty calls. But Camille didn't let go of his hand immediately. Come back, she said. Please, next weekend, and the one after that. I want... She stopped, started again. I want to know you, Marcus Webb. I want my daughter to know your daughters. I want whatever this is to become something real. I want that too, Marcus admitted, but I don't know how this works. Our lives are so different. Then we'll figure it out, together. Over the next 3 months, they built something neither of them had expected. Camille came to Oakland on weekends, wearing jeans instead of designer suits, eating at Marcus's tiny kitchen table, braiding Zara's hair while Marcus cooked dinner. She learned his neighborhood, met Mrs. Patterson, attended Amara's school play, and Marcus went to San Francisco, his daughters treating Camille's house like a second home, teaching Arya to clap, showing her picture books, being the big sisters she didn't have. They fell in love slowly, carefully, like two people who'd been hurt before and knew the value of taking their time. But Marcus's pride remained a wall between them. When his car broke down and he couldn't afford repairs, he took the bus for 2 weeks rather than ask Camille for help. When Zara needed glasses and his insurance didn't fully cover them, he picked up extra shifts instead of mentioning it. When his landlord raised the rent and Marcus had to choose between staying in their apartment or moving somewhere cheaper and farther from the girls' school, he started looking at listings in neighborhoods he knew weren't safe. Camille found out by accident, saw a rental listing pulled up on his phone. Marcus, why didn't you tell me? Because it's not your problem. We're in a relationship. Your problems are my problems. No. Marcus's voice was firm. I don't need you to save me, Camille. I've been taking care of my daughters alone for 3 years. I don't need... What? Help? Support? Love? Camille's voice rose. You're so determined to do everything yourself that you won't let anyone in. Not really. That's not fair. Isn't it? You helped me on that plane without a second thought. You've spent months advising me on parenting, supporting me, being there whenever I needed you. But you won't accept the same in return. Why? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, because if I accept your help, what does that make me? The poor guy who latched onto a rich woman? The janitor who couldn't make it on his own? It makes you human, Camille said softly. It makes you someone who loves and is loved in return. Someone who deserves support. I don't want your money. I'm not offering money. I'm offering partnership. I'm offering to build a life together where we help each other, where your daughters and my daughter become sisters, where we face problems together instead of you carrying everything alone. She stepped closer. I love you, Marcus Webb. Not because you're perfect or because you don't need help. I love you because you're kind and strong and the best father I've ever seen. And I want to be part of your life. All of it. The struggles and the victories and everything in between." Marcus felt something break open in his chest. That wall he'd built, brick by brick, to protect himself and his daughters from needing anyone. "I don't know how to do that," he whispered. "Neither do I," Camille admitted. "But we can learn together." 6 months later, they moved into a new house. Not Camille's Pacific Heights mansion, but something in between. A place in the Oakland Hills with enough room for 3 daughters, with a yard where they could play, in a neighborhood with good schools. Camille sold her mansion. "Too many rooms, not enough life," she said, and invested in Marcus. Not with money, though she helped him pay off his debts so he could breathe. But with time, with emotional support, with the kind of partnership that meant he could finally go back to school. Marcus enrolled in a program for non-traditional students, working toward finishing his pre-med degree. It would take years, and it would be hard, but Camille was there, helping with the girls when he had to study, quizzing him on terminology, believing in him when he doubted himself. And Marcus was there for her, too, teaching her that success wasn't measured in quarterly earnings but in Aria's laughter, showing her that a home was built with love, not expensive furniture, reminding her on her hardest days that being a mother meant showing up and trying, even when you felt like you were failing. 1 year after that flight, they stood in their backyard watching their 3 daughters play together. Amara was teaching Aria to walk, holding her chubby hands while she took wobbly steps. Zara was making flower crowns for everyone. "I never thought I'd have this," Camille said, leaning against Marcus. "A family. A real family." "Me neither," Marcus admitted. "After Simone died, I thought that part of my life was over, that I'd just be a single dad forever. And now? Now I'm a single dad who found someone who sees me, really sees me. Not just the janitor or the struggling parent, but all of it. The person I am and the person I'm trying to become." Camille turned to face him. "You saved my life on that plane, Marcus. Not just Aria's. Mine. You reminded me that asking for help isn't weakness, that accepting love doesn't make you less, that family is built, not bought." "You saved mine too," Marcus said. "You taught me that I didn't have to do everything alone, that letting someone in doesn't mean losing yourself, that love can come in the form you least expect, from the person you'd never think to look for." They kissed while their daughters played, while the sun set over Oakland, while their future stretched out before them like an unwritten story. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story. Sometimes the person who changes your life is sitting in first class while you're in economy. Sometimes help comes from the last place you'd expect. Sometimes love arrives when you're too tired to look for it, in the form of a crying baby on an airplane and a stranger brave enough to stand up and help. Because the greatest miracles don't announce themselves. They whisper in the hum of a lullaby. They arrive in the courage to accept help. They live in the space between pride and love, where 2 broken people discover they can be whole together.